What's up, Sam?
Hey Christian, can you hear me?
Yeah,
This
loud
meeting
and
is
clear.
being recorded.
Sorry,
Awesome.
my note taker automatically records because I've been doing these admissions calls, so I can turn that off if you want. But
No, all good.
cool. How are you?
Yeah, good man. Just had an activating day walking around downtown Amsterdam, getting to know a new town, a new city. And yeah, so feeling a lot of energy in the evening time and yeah, feeling ready to go, excited for our call and curious to see what comes up for us.
Yeah, same. So you just moved to Amsterdam then?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I've been so from Australia obviously, but then been traveling Europe for the past few months. Spent some time in Portugal, in France and Belgium, but now, yeah, focusing on Amsterdam, trying to start a business in the Netherlands, where mushrooms are obviously legal. So that's going to take some work. Obviously, trying to start a new business in a foreign city, as a 27-year-old is not an easy task. But yeah, I'm giving it a crack. So we'll see what I can pull together.
How long have you been working on the project? And I'd imagine the project is the sort of psychedelic infused vibroacoustic chair experience.
Hmm. That's right. Yeah, yeah. So following Jamie's work, and with a lot of people, I talk about an ecology of practices. Um, so there's a few different things that I love to offer: circling and authentic relating, rebirthing breathwork, meditation, applied philosophy practices. So this sort of thing I feel is important to at least name, because to me there's a big difference between offering a whole program of practices that can be supportive for people versus just offering something that focuses on psychedelics.
Hmm.
I feel that there's an important difference. But yes, this main project has been, it's the love labor of a couple of years, really, of working with a friend of mine that I met in Thailand, where we just found this tech augmented psychedelic experience is a way to essentially be a lot more embodied and grounded while tripping. And we found that was a pretty interesting combination. And yeah, what felt like the world was big enough for a few different psychedelic chairs. So Europe was a logical place to begin. Yeah.
Have you been tracking the market that's emerging, at least here in the US, around the vibroacoustic therapy?
Yeah. It's really sort of kicking off at the moment, isn't it? The technology is really spreading and becoming much more widely available. So
Yeah,
I think that's a good thing to see.
yeah. I'd love to, we can take this conversation anywhere you want, really, but I've got a vibroacoustic table in my right across the wall, I'm in this business that we started in 2020. It's called True North Float. So we do float tanks, sauna, cold plunge, and now we just brought the vibroacoustic table in this year. We also do massage, body work. We were partnering with a clinic offering ketamine assisted journeys as well for a while, um, which went well, but in terms of the experiences were great and the feedback was great, but the clinic changed ownership and it kind of just fell away in terms of the sessions here. But it's something that
Mm.
I do hear you on a lot, like the not just the tech assisted or tech augmented psychedelic journeys, but the just all the different practices and the different tools available to bring both a higher level of, I guess, ecstasis, and like a more of an impactful experience, but also integration and safety and intentionality and ethical approach to all of it needs to be
Mm.
balanced, and that's, as far as I can tell, that's sort of the frontier in terms of this whole psychedelic renaissance, is like who's doing that all well. Um,
Mm.
yeah, so there's a lot going on. I'm actually traveling to Denver at the end of the week to go to the psychedelic science conference.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'd imagine there's going to be some vibroacoustic tables there if I had to guess.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to hear you. So what I'm reflecting on at the moment, I mean, so someone from Australia, like for me, um, Australia is pretty out of the way, and so in some ways it's behind in a lot of these in the psychedelic renaissance, as a bit of a backwater. And so for me, coming to a city that is right in the thick of psychedelic renaissance in Europe, Amsterdam, it's fascinating to see smart shops, places that are selling people magic mushrooms like on street corners, and 18-year-old kids that have never heard of any of this before and are coming in, and the person behind the counter is saying, "Hey, do you guys know what visuals are?" Like you and helping them to orient to this whole world. Um, I guess my reflection is I've been sort of, I guess, obsessively studying the metacrisis and the sort of the situation of humanity in the world circa 2025 now. And for me, in reality, the psychedelic renaissance is like one small part of how we can either contribute to that or try to redress it.
Hmm.
And as far as I can understand, it feels like a critical moment. But of course, you have people saying that at all different moments. But it does feel like, yeah, unless we show up, and unless, for me, a new generation of young people and young thinkers are willing to speak up for what they believe in, then the trajectories seem far less positive.
Yeah.
And so for me, this, I mean, sorry, I should, yeah, what comes up hearing me say that?
Oh, wait. I mean, I wasn't trying to cut you off. I'm just listening. It's great. I was just thinking of two things. One is that I mean, you already know this because sounds like you're an FGP alum, right? You've been to camp and you're familiar with Jamie's stuff. And, so you already kind of know, I would imagine this, but this is kind of a community of practice that fosters many, many people who feel the same way that you just said. Um,
Hmm.
I just think about the calls I've been having with Power of Story and how many of the people coming in are like specifically trying to tell this story around psychedelics as not just psychedelics, but this this overarching uh, kind of narrative around the metacrisis and humanity's kind of crux of transformation and sort of trying to find a way through. But a lot of people writing books around microdosing and psychedelics and just new stories, new narratives and frameworks for I guess a new kind of paradigm. This
Mm,
is I think two big levers for me. Like you mentioned one already with psychedelics, and I think anyone who's had a transformational psychedelic experience feels that way. They're like, well, this is important, on some level. We got to figure this out. Um, and then another area to me is story because
mm,
language is the liquid that we're all dissolved in, right? And at
hmm.
the base layer, I mean, this is all going to probably sound like I'm sure this is going
Go
to
for it.
land with you, which is basically just superstructure, social structure, infrastructure, and superstructure is at the bottom, right?
Hmm.
So superstructure is the base layer. Our stories are sort of constructs around with language and story and myth and metaphor. These
Hmm.
are the things that sort of weave together social structures which build infrastructure in the world. And so I think that
Mm,
getting the story right, or at least rethinking the story, that we're kind of collectively telling around private property, around economics, around, this paradigm of separateness, of separation of self and other. All those things
mm,
kind of have to be rethought a little bit. One story that needs to really be rethought is the sort of path of individuation, the path of a human life. What
hmm.
is the evolution of a person of consciousness as we step
Mm,
into some, hopefully a soul-centric paradigm versus
hmm.
an egocentric one, and transition out of an adolescent culture into a truly adult culture that belongs to the northern human world and stewards it properly. So that's one thing that was coming, and then the other was a simple little thing I read this morning from Oliver Berkman, insignificance theory, or sorry, cosmic insignificance therapy, which is kind of the other side of the polarity, right? Like super super critical time. Everything matters right now. Like we gotta fucking step up. This is like a tipping point in our planet. And I'm with you on all that. And then the other side of the paradox is like zoom out far enough and none of this fucking matters at all.
Yeah, wow, that's feels very intuitive and flowy, and so I'm sort of just gonna trust myself to say what feels right if that's comfortable with you, and we'll see where we
Yeah,
get to.
jump in.
Yeah, I so I've been really deeply immersed in Jungian stuff and Stan Grof. So
Yeah.
studying the process of individuation and understanding that Jung was describing the emergence of a new center of personality. And we used to think about that, and he as well thought about that in terms of the context of what we call individual development. But it's also, he was describing the rebirth of God in Western culture. And for me, like hearing you talk about that, there's this relationship between our own individual development, how we're growing and transforming in real time, and a collective process that is unfolding in the world as we speak. And for me, like there is a mycelial network in the fabric of what we call the collective unconscious that is knitting itself together in real time. And I feel that part of our task is to connect with void-like qualities, emptiness, nothingness, or insignificance, so as to become porous in our identities, so we can get out of the way for something to pass through us that is capable of responding to this cultural moment. I feel that
Mm,
there is a temptation to grab the one ring in the sense of
mm,
we have to do something quick, we have to do something. And this is like, who is the we that is doing? And I feel that there is a we that is capable of responding, but I feel that it's a force or a power, let's say, that is coming through from a more collective layer, and that our
mm,
responsibility is in some way to get out of our own way. The analogy I like to use is if you remember Harry Potter at the end of Prisoner of Azkaban is waiting for his father to show up and cast the Patronus to save himself and Sirius. And he's like, no, don't worry, my dad's gonna come and he'll save the day. And then Hermione is like, Harry, no one's coming, dude, and you're dying. You're literally dying. And he sees the empty space that is left by the absence of his father. And when he sees that empty space clearly for the first time, he's able to step in to himself,
mm,
into his own shoes, and
mm.
perform magic for the first time.
Wow. Wow. That's beautiful. That's if you mind if I jump in here, that's calling up for me this story of Christ and Jesus and how we've externalized that part onto this archetype. We've created a Girardian sort of scapegoat for the
Hmm.
savior. And so it's almost like when you have that shift into the tragic and that revelation that there is no Jesus coming back on a chariot of fire to redeem all of our sins, right? That the Savior is in fact, well, first of all, it's that tragic, empty void of Savior. And then realizing, holy shit, it's us. It's us that are going to save us, or not. And,
Mm,
and then not falling into the trap of it's me, you know, in the sense
mm,
of like, I am the one, I am the Savior, I am the one grabbing the ring of power. I'm the
mm,
called, chosen, right? But actually, it's the great we, the big we, um,
mm,
and so to be in my this has been me kind of you're getting a little insight into me sort of trying to rescue the baby from the bathwater of my upbringing, which was fundamentalist Christian Mormon,
mm, mm,
and being named Christian and really doing a lot of unpacking through my 20s to figure that out. But now coming to the more of the realization that to be Christed then is to be in the body of Christ, not to be the one, but to be part of the body, which is um,
mm,
has stepped into your own divinity or the
mm,
I guess the metaphor of being the son of God or the child of God, right? And
Hmm.
I like to think of it in terms of if we're thinking about cosmology now, because I think that's like the base layer story for most people.
Hmm.
What's our cosmology? And in the West, the Christian cosmology is fundamental. It's like it's underpinned even secular thought, and uh, the Trinity of Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Rethinking that, because most people think of that Trinity in the Nicene kind of way, which is that it's this holy masculine uh, triple that is outside of me, right? There's like the ultimate father. There's the savior, which is the king, right? That I'm supposed to sort of pledge fealty to. And then there's the spirit, which is kind of this abstraction, which kind of equates to how we experience that connection. Um, where's the feminine, right? And so it's like,
Yes, yes.
yeah. And so I've been sort of like recrafting the Trinity in my own sort of to make it more useful to me, which is father, mother, right? At the top of the
Hmm.
triangle. And then the bottom of the triangle is child, right? So father,
Hmm.
ultimate reality, mother. So you might say spirit and matter, right? Matter and mother, kind of the same word. So like spirit and matter uh, matter and energy, or however you want to say that in like physics terms, coming down to the child, which isn't separate from, it's participatory in the Godhead. Child is
Mm.
the subjective God. It's God on the inside. It's God as the self, God as the soul, or the Atman. And this revelation, I think, is being Christed or Christ consciousness to say the Father and I are one. There's no separation between us and you, us and cosmos, us and universe. And so the kingdom of the Father is spread across the earth, but you do not see it. And you dwell instead in this poverty, which is what Jesus said in the Gospel of Thomas. Like
Mm.
when you're lost in this separate self, you're in poverty.
Mm. Wow, well, hearing you, I feel like totally on the same wavelength. And I'm just popping out and noticing how cool it is to be able to drop into a space and be in the same rhythm and the same flow and forget about who I am for a minute and forget my personal story and trying to impress anyone. And likewise, um, it doesn't matter that your name is Christian. We're kind of on the same planet, and what I hear is telling the same fundamental story. And so for
Mm,
me, like there was it's something about um the word made flesh. And so
mm,
the logos as the incarnating principle of the Spirit of Christ, let's say.
mm,
And so there's something about being able to speak into the same shared space where,
mm,
for example, from Aristotle, we kind of inherited this idea that there's a story of there's a Christian and a Sam and a relationship which is an emergent property. And there's a big flip happening in science and philosophy where it's like, oh no, actually, this betweenness that we can feel and sense into and is difficult to name actually comes first. Actually comes first. Even right down to the primordial, it was our relationship with our mother that our identities emerged out of in the first place. And I just feel that I don't know if you've been tracking Jordan Hall at all and his conversion back to the Catholic Church,
mm,
but the study of what a post-Christian society might look like has been going back and forth in my mind for the last year, sort of flipping between John Vervaeke and Jordan Hall. Do we need a secular response, or can we find a way of reimagining the Christian mythology? And for me, I'm still in the middle of that, but the conclusion has been something like we know that true communion is the root of community, culture, and civilization. And then there's a question of how. How can we achieve that true communion with each other? And that for me is where the ecology of psychotechnologies from John Vervaeke steps in to fill a void of giving people the skills and tools to be able to speak into and to access in a shared way the the sacredness that emerges from the space that is between people. And
mm,
if I can speak into, I feel that there is a key difference between the generation of thinkers that Jamie and Jordan Hall and John Vervaeke and all those people are in. And I'm wondering what your sense of this is, but my sense is that the people in my generation, there is a key difference between coming from an abundance mentality and a scarcity mentality. And I feel that when I talk to the people of my own generation, there are some people that are just already living in the future world, which is already post metacrisis. And it's speaking from a place of not trying to get something which we already have, but trying to speak from and evoke something which is already here and between
Hmm.
us, and which actually constitutes who we are at the most fundamental level, but which we're out of practice in communing with. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I'll pause there.
Yeah, nice. That's a very lovely and optimistic way of painting it in terms of the not being in lack, but having really just coming into what's already there and the foundation of being itself, which is relational. Um,
Mm,
I'm very aligned with that. I would say where I land in terms of if I was to measure myself up against that, unfortunately, I do find myself operating a lot from a perspective of lack, and or in other words,
mm,
critique or seeing the problem super clearly and feeling like how are we going to get from here to there kind of thing. And so
mhm,
there's this tension, there's this distance between what's now and what's optimal. Um, and so I guess the practice for me uh, is to try to sink back down into what already is. And
mm,
I think that strangely, paradoxically, the kind of cosmic insignificance therapy thing I mentioned before helps me do that, where I can get out of my own need to fix it, and for at least temporarily, where I can be like, huh, like even if we, let's say, make it through or we don't, like we cast the Patronus or we don't, you know what I mean? Like, does it matter in the grand scheme of the cosmos? Is it, and I know there's like the other side of that paradox, which is that from the seat that we're in, it's all that matters, right? Like it's deeply meaningful to be a subject, to be a person um, experiencing reality. Like there's just salient information. There's just what it's like to be me, feeling important, but also isn't the emptiness that we need, the perspective shift that we need, realizing that they're not just a me, and that the me is actually when framed that way, it's actually illusory. That
mhm,
the me in the sense of inside my skin is actually illusory because it's connected to everything else, right? The me
mhm,
is actually a thing that the universe is doing, you know. So I'm a process that the universe is doing. The universe is Christianing, and that is what I am. And there's no separate, on the fundamental level, there's no separate self. So that's uh, for me, that's been the thing that I've been both liberated by, but also still wrestling with in terms of like on a
mhm,
practical level, integrating that and unwinding all of the stories that have really conditioned this ego to
mhm,
be very grabby and control. Uh,
mhm,
so one more thing that I felt when you were speaking was about this idea of the dialogos and the space between, and this frame of
mm,
do we need the evolution of Christianity or the post Christianity secular version? But what John's saying, Jesus said too, like
mm,
when two or more are gathered in my name, there I will be also.
mhm,
Speaking from the logos, perspective. So I think that that's it, on the more mystical level of Christianity, that's kind of pointing to the same moon.
mhm,
Uh,
mm,
so I think that what you said though about communion being the foundation of culture, community, and civilization, um, I think it's also I think it's yes, and I think it's also the root of wholeness. You know, so like belonging to a greater whole. If you're
mhm,
just a separate self, you're cut off from a greater whole, right?
mhm,
And so the communion to me at its deepest level is like the communion that Rumi would speak of communion with the beloved,
mm,
and being in like a state of union or communion with God, or whatever word you want to insert for the ultimate reality. And to me, like that's the level of communion that if psychedelics can help us sort of orient that way or to sort of
Hmm.
expand more and fill into that more, that's a huge win. But to me, that's the story that has to evolve, or the paradigm that has to evolve, is this idea that communion is like is kind of just a abstract ritual where we take a wafer or something, and it sort of in some ways cuts us off from communion, as putting this sort of thing outside of us. But at least in my world that I grew up in, like the Eucharist, the sacrament, it was more of like a how have I sinned kind of feeling, like am I worthy of taking this kind of thing, um, versus like a something like a entheogen that just brings you straight into the communion,
Hmm.
directly. So,
Yeah,
I
well said. Yeah, I feel I forget who it was in some of the psychedelic literature. It might have even been Castaneda from the 60s, was talking like the Mexicans were saying, oh, the Christians, they go into their church and they talk about God, but we take our entheogen, peyote or whatever it is that they're taking, and we become God. And it's like, and that was Jung's critique as well of the church, is that the communion basically wasn't delivering. It wasn't getting people there to a direct, unmediated, unfiltered numinous experience of the beloved, of the divine. I was thinking as well of Chris Beisch, LSD and the Mind of the Universe, where he talks a lot about his relationship with the beloved, and he's an amazing being. I don't know if you've read that book, but it's like, wow, he
have
really
we
got
book
pretty
clubbed
far.
it.
Yeah,
We did. We book clubbed it. He actually came on in the final call of our book club,
wow.
and jammed with us. But yeah, we did that as an FGP kind of cohort.
Hmm. That's super cool. I'd love to chat with him someday. I feel, yeah, I was resonating with what you were saying. There's kind of, for me, in a way, one story that has never been told. And there's a way that mm, all the stories are sort of, yeah, fingers pointing to the same moon, as you put it, and they can express that with greater or lesser fidelity, but they're all fundamentally pointing in the same direction. And how can I land this? I'm going to keep using Harry Potter if it's cool with you. There's something about
Hmm.
um, this this philosopher's stone, or this there's a for me there's a kind of if you imagine an invisible sphere which is sort of floating between us. I'm sort of trying to describe the outlines of that, and realizing that that might be the void that we are, and all the stories can describe that sort of void which is between us, let's say, and within us, better or worse. But there's something there where, like, if you imagine that that is the sort of this the philosopher's stone that we're trying to find, or the snitch that we're trying to catch if we're playing Quidditch or whatever. There's a way that, if you remember Harry in the Philosopher's Stone, he was in the movie and in the book, they were looking into the mirror of Erised, which is the mirror of desire, desire backwards, and it's sort of like the shadow of desire, where Ron Weasley was wanting the material qualities. He was wanting to see himself be, the best, and have all the girls and have all the status like that. And this would be the equivalent to wanting to survive the metacrisis or something like that, where the alternative would be um, Harry was able to look into the mirror of Erised and uh, reveal the location of the Philosopher's Stone to him, because he didn't want to use it for a specific purpose. He just wanted to, I forget, it was because it was for a completely selfless reason, like he wanted to keep it safe from Professor Quirrell getting it or something like that. And it was only by virtue of his selflessness and his sort of non-material desire that he was actually able to find the stone. And so the analogy would be something like, it would be a mistake, as you're pointing to, I feel, it would be a mistake to say, hey, we have this problem situation and we have to dot 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 discover our inherent divinity so that we can survive. It's more something like, I'm trying to describe this I don't know, void like quality, or this emptiness, or this fundamental related relational principle, however you want to talk about it, because I find that the most fascinating thing to do. And I would find that the most fascinating thing to do, whether or not there was a meta crisis.
Mm,
And it just so happens that I have a feeling that if we can really kind of hit the art pedal to the floor, as Terence McKenna used to say. So,
mm,
like, if we can really take seriously the idea of our inherent divinity and talk about that seriously as a fundamental metaphysical principle of no, hang on, this is what's really going on. I feel that one of the offshoots or consequences of that would be a way of being that is capable of navigating us through. But I'm not so naive as to think that there's not going to be a lot of death and destruction and suffering. And I don't have a whole, formula, and I don't think a formula or a method exists. What I feel is that the pursuit of what is most meaningful has to be the place to look, if there is any
mm,
place. And for me,
mm.
that has to do with trying to dialogue in this way, but it also involves getting practical about, like, hang on, what's the circular economy of whatever community I'm embedded in? It kind of does come back to recycling and waste management at some level.
Yeah, well, and it seems like how do we properly hold the experience of communion? It sounds to me like that's
Yes.
maybe kind of at one of the roots of your project.
Yes, it's an organizational problem. It's like it's one thing to have a direct, unfiltered experience of the numinous, but it's another thing to hold that in a life, in an identity, in a community with other people. And that's where the cultural anthropology and design science is as you're saying, at the cutting edge. Um,
Hmm.
because then there can be multiple recipes and again different stories from different traditions, but they can be like different solutions to the same underlying problem. In the same way that the principles of evolution can give rise to very different creatures who are all adapted in their own context. Well, there might be, let's say, communities that are capable of responding to the challenge of the meta crisis that are running some kind of new human 2.0 software, but they might look very different in different locations.
Hmm. I love what you said about the way forward being the way into meaning or what feels most meaningful. Um, there's a Are you familiar with there's a few different ways I wanted to go with the combo, but
Hmm.
the uh the fact that you're super into Groff and Jung, are you familiar with Bill Plotkin?
Yeah, adjacent to. I need to read his stuff still, but I had a little look and I was like, wow, this guy's really on it, and I need to explore this deeply and start doing this work. Yeah,
Do you mind if I share something
please.
visual? So I read well I found his last year was a bit of a rough year for me, and I was, you
Hmm.
know, down in the sort of mud of the deconstruction sort of individuation process. And um
Hmm.
also, I've since been able to orient myself, and I'll show you the map, which will kind of help you see what I'm saying. But I found Plotkin's work. Long story short, went on this kind of journey down through his work, and that led to a physical journey into a vision quest up on the mountain, a 3-day dry fast, which culminated in
Hmm.
a float experience, which was very both transcendent but also very grounding in terms of like pulling me into this deeply meaningful uh, work and my sort of path. And
Hmm.
anyways, I just wanted to share this. So this is from his book, Nature and the Human Soul, which is what I did is I took I'll just share my screen. I took the book and let's see, here we are. So I took the book and condensed it into two images. So
Wow.
full
Hmm.
disclosure, the map is Plotkin's and the images are AI generations. So I just kind of was just trying to kind of stitch something together that could hopefully land with people. And then we
Hmm.
printed them out and they're on our walls here at the float shop. But basically what he's doing is he's kind of at the one hand critiquing the current sort of
Hmm.
path that we're on in sort of our culture, and he calls it a patho-adolescent society. So we're sort of stuck at adolescence. And then he's offering a different
Hmm.
story in terms of a wheel of soul-centric human development that begins, in the nest. as an innocent in the nest. And then, as you have ego formation, you transfer over that threshold and you leave the nest, and you now have a self, right? A separate self that's exploring the garden. So this is the
Mhm.
explorer in the garden. As you translate over through puberty, as you cross this threshold, you're now the thespian at the oasis who's stepping into a role, who's playing a role, who's putting on a mask or a persona to belong to a community or tribe or village. I should also say that each chapter or each stage has a gift. So the
Mhm.
innocent has the gift of luminous presence. The explorer has the gift of wonder. The thespian has the gift of fire as the teenager. And then as you're confirmed by your community and you become the wanderer, you go out on your soul quest as the wanderer in the cocoon. And he uses the cocoon as the metaphor, for metamorphosis, approaching soul initiation, which is the quintessential threshold, right? This is the threshold from adolescence into adulthood. It's the horizontal axis of the wheel. So the east is birth and death with the sunrise as your ascension into spirit. And then the west, the descent down into soul, down into the underworld, into darkness, is soul
Mm.
initiation. And this top half of the wheel is where it really diverts from this other story. So now you're an apprentice at the wellspring, drinking from the wellspring of soul, like following the beloved, following the muse, as you cultivate your delivery system for your gift. And then you are
Mm.
ultimately inducted if you've cultivated that delivery system, you're inducted as an artist into the wild orchard as you bear the fruit of your gift. And then as you approach the north, which is the nurturing generative side of the wheel, it's the place where there's darkness, right? It's like where you have to have winter. It's the winter solstice. It's where you have to have your uh, nurturing generative capacities, and you transition. You're crowned as a master in the grove of elders, giving your gift to the next generation, and then ultimately surrendering to life as you approach the east again, as the sage in the mountain cave who passively radiates the gift and tends the more than human world or the cosmos. So this is sort of a new story from him. I think it would, based on the resonance that we've had, it seems like something that you might be interested in. So figured I would just share it.
Yeah, I really appreciate the share. If I remember correctly, I gave that book as a gift to my brother for Christmas. Sort of, yeah, I think I listened to Plotkin and Nate Hagen's talk about his developmental model, and we're obviously all stuck in this adolescent culture. And for me, any model of higher development, there's a lot of arguments back and forth about which one is the best one, but it's kind of like any model can it kind of get us there? I've been in this so I would say I just sort of moved from uh, confirmation to wanderer stage, let's say, in my own particular little arc that I'm running. And
Mm,
um, I I appreciate the share. What I want to say about that is like I've partly been studying this archetype of the wheel, whether it be the wheel of fate or the wheel of time, the wheel of birth and death, the samsaric wheel. It shows up in a lot of places, right? It's also it's associated with the form of life rather than its essence. It's like the if we divide up or split up life into these 8 segments, this is a kind of model that we get. And obviously, there's a one which is behind or in front of the wheel, which the wheel itself is derived from. In the sense of what I'm connecting here is that um, there's a feminine quality to the wheel. And what I'm then going to say about that is I feel that there is a specific archetypal dynamic that is unintegrated in the Western psyche,
hmm
that is clouding our vision and getting in the way of our culture um, spearheading the process of uncovering a clearer vision of the God who has already been reborn.
hmm
So I guess and this is just something that I'm working through in real time, and these are just speculative thoughts, and we can take them or leave them. But my experience, let's say, as a psychologist in training, if you want to put it like that, is that there's this specific relationship between the archetype of evil personified in figures like the devil or like Satan, or like a combination of the Christian God and Satan, if we want to use a Gnostic or Jungian particularly lens. The relationship between that archetype of evil and the negative feminine, the negative face of the Great Mother. I feel that these two archetypal figures are in a kind of conspiracy or tension, and that the reason that this Western culture, wow, okay, I have
Yeah.
to pause.
This is a
Damn,
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, but this is Kali Ma. This is dark feminine. So I just wanted to
yeah,
share that while you were riffing.
yeah, yeah. Well, I can feel that this is these themes, and maybe this is why the Christian stuff came up, right? Is that we're immediately resonating at this level of the reason that Western culture is all about dissent is because there's something down there which is living
Hmm.
that we have to sort out. And for me, until I haven't quite worked out yet, but I feel that it's either that the God who is in the process of being reborn is their progeny, or their conflict is getting in the way of the emergence of God sort of on the other side. And I don't know, this is just where I'm at with it at the moment, but what I'm feeling is that sort of using a psychological scalpel, if you like, until we as a culture go down in there and work out the relationship between our own capacity for evil and the sort of the dark feminine, which is really coming at us in the world, right? This is kind of what the metacrisis is Mother Nature is kicking us off unless we can sort our shit out. Um, I guess I'm really feeling that as I start to clarify what my role in this is to work out some of the inner dimensions of this crisis and try to articulate at a cultural level what is going on archetypally and collectively. That feels like at the moment, as well as sharing practices, as well as saying, hey, let's get enough people sharing enough of the same message of like community, culture. This is how to do the human thing. There's an extent where we don't need people telling really different stories. We need enough people telling enough of the right story. But as
Hmm.
far as I can tell, my own unique contribution or my own unique role is to start trying to articulate this, collective, evolutionary, and archetypal um, content. And this was my interest. This is the reason for
Mm.
coming back to FGP, and because I've had this like period of sort of, to be honest, prophetic writing as I've been turning 27, and I can feel that there is a process which is really at work in me, and I am, yeah, seeking to have the right people around me to support and guide me through that process of working through my own material, but then also sharing and articulating whatever I can find essentially, and seeing what other people make of it. I know that was
Yeah.
a big download.
No, it's super good, man. Yeah, unfortunately we're running out of time, but I feel so much resonance. It's been a real pleasure to just drop in with you and just get a little window in. Um, there's a couple of just quick open threads like you and you were talking about the wheel and it being kind of unintegrated with our masculine sort of Western culture. I think of the cross as the antithesis of that, and that's why the quadrated circle of the wheel of life or the four directions, the medicine wheel is very it's almost like a union of opposites. And I think it's
Mhm,
just in terms of symbolism and archetypal language, I think that is Plotkin is spot on, and he's obviously 40 years into this ride. Um,
mhm,
so yeah, I love the place you're coming from, both the curiosity of it and the good, like the I would say like passion to take the steps down into the that wanderer, down into the cocoon and wherever it takes you. Um, it it's really rad to see. I think that your coming to FGP is like whether you end up publishing a book or whatever you end up doing, like the community of practice is that. It's definitely this is kind of what the vibe is, 100%. And then in terms of power of story, I think it would be a huge unlock for helping you bridge from this sort of liminal kind of space where you're trying to like let the thing come in fully and then actually tell that story, you know.
Mm,
It's a really really powerful just structure in terms of all of the different tools and practices that Jamie's kind of distilling into this cohort.
mm,
So I get the sense that this one's not the right time, right, in terms
mhm,
of timing for you in the world, but maybe so the next one would be January. So I'm happy to reach out to you then, but also just beyond all of that, I would love to stay in touch and I have a longing for more of this and more of Dialogos, more of like just the
mhm.
shared exploration space. That's like something I really, really need more of in my life, and I really, really get filled up by it. So thank you.
Yeah, well, right back at you, man. I feel like this was, yeah, such a pleasure to just drop in and find so much resonance sort of at the door without looking for it, which is really cool. I feel, yeah, it's really wonderful to just know that FGP exists and to sort of be able to drop in at what feels like the right time and sort of put up my hand and say, hey, I've got something going on. What do you guys think about it? Or like, I think there will be different times for me to engage more fully. And yeah, I love the idea of us still being in touch. I think for me, one of the real um, mm, things that I've overlooked or yeah, a bit sort of left out has been actively seeking people who are, I'm going to say, a little bit older and wiser, or
Mm,
who've worked it out a little bit more than myself. And creating those kind of relationships has been something that has um, not really been possible for me. So I
mm,
don't know how we want to frame that or approach it, but even just to the extent of dropping in once in a while and having this kind of a conversation, I personally would find that really valuable. Um,
awesome.
I I want to follow up by saying, um, if you guys know anyone who's around Amsterdam or Central Europe, um, and if it's possible to share contacts or like put me in touch with people, it could be useful to know other FGP alum or people who are
Yeah.
adjacent, who are around here, because I am, yeah, very much in a wanderer phase and wanting to connect up with like-minded people who are in my vicinity and let them know what I'm up
Yeah.
to.
You should. This isn't necessarily FGP related, and this has to be the last thing because I got to hop to a call. But the Portier guys, have you checked out Portier?
No,
P
how
O
would you spell
R
that?
Portier. They're making these portal boxes, ceremonial boxes for psychedelic ceremony. They're, I think, in Amsterdam. I did a podcast with them once. They're super cool guys. I think that you should meet them. And if you want to, I could try to connect you guys too over email potentially if you'd like. But I think they're in your hood and they're right around your age, maybe a little older, but they're super cool. And yeah, you know, it's all about community, man, connecting, weaving the mycelial web together. Let's stay in touch. And I would love to just try to like maybe weave together some sort of, I don't know how often, but some sort of periodic call with not just us, but like-minded individuals where we can just get in and free form sort of jam and just see what emerges. Because there's something about that like unstructured, hey, let's just see what happens. That's super magical. So, but I do have to hop, unfortunately, Sam. It's been fun, man.
It's been so great, man. Take care, and I'd love to
Yeah.
get this recording if you do have it available. That would be super cool.
Yeah,
But
I'll drop you a link. It might just email you automatically, but if not, I'll drop you a link.
awesome. Take care, man. Pleasure.
Yeah. Cheers. Yeah,
Cheers.
see ya.
Bye.